But we're gonna turn it over to Mandy to facilitate. Woohoo! Mandy, take it away.
Sure. So we have some questions that we're going to ask, but if you guys have any questions, you can write them down. We will have a chance to open the floor for questions later on in the conversation. So the first question that we have is, what compelled you guys to get involved in this work? And anyone can start on the panel.
For me, I guess it's like I've been involved in organizing and activism for a couple years now. It's been years. And I kind of just grew up like being involved in different types of campaigns and movements and things. But it's really just I want to see I want to see what I want in the world, and I want to create a space where I can exist happily, peacefully, and go beyond and excel and be the person I wish to be. And I recognize that like injustice somewhere is like injustice everywhere. And they're if someone's stuck somewhere and they need help, and or if there's something wrong systematically, whatever it is, like I want to change it or help be a part of making the system change and improving schools or my community, and um, really just being the change and seeing the change happen in front of me. So that's kind of what compels me to be a part of youth organizing and activism. So
Thank you so much for speaking, Z. My, I, okay, starting from middle school, I always felt othered just because of a lot of my identities, and because of the climate of middle school, I kind of just developed a lot of the friendships I developed were with other people who had been othered, and that's when a lot of my interest in this work started, was because I had a really hard time advocating for myself, but when it came to my friends, I would advocate for them relentlessly, and it kind of began me it kind of took me on a path of not only learning to eventually love myself and eventually advocate for myself kind of full circle once I realized I had the tools because I was doing it for my friends, but it also like started me on a journey of self-advocacy in general.
Thank you. And for me, just like as a whole, what motivated or compelled me to do this work is that I'm very interested in restorative justice, and like how the school to prison pipeline functions. And my belief is that SROs are like the main or one of the main components of that inherently racist system. So like when given the opportunity to sort of advise and speak to adults and community members about the SRO position, I was really excited to have that opportunity and chat with everyone.
Yeah, I think a big motivation is just there's obviously a lot of things that need to be changed and improved upon, and I just want that for people. Like I just want people to be able to like get through life as easily as possible where I wasn't able to. And so even like specifically the RSO stuff, like I just think it's really important to do these things because even though I didn't have a fully positive and great high school experience, I want everyone else, especially POCs, to be able to have that. So that's where I need to step in. And so I'm happy to do that for the next generations and like my siblings and like whatever else. So I think that was a big motivation.
Thank you guys so much for answering that question. Our next question is, what were SROs doing in your school? What was the unique situations at your school and what did it look like? I can also put the question in the chat if no one heard me.
I guess I can start. So the unique situation at my school was that the SRO position had only been a part of our school for about 2 years, and it was an immediate and not well thought out reaction to the Parkland shootings. And their thought process was kind of like to fight fire with fire. And so they like instituted a system that had more policing in our schools. But what the examination of the disciplinarian system had been going on before the SROs were a part of the school. And so, what kind of led the SRO out of school movement in my school was not so much the SRO's behavior, but the behavior of the disciplinarian system, which was very toxic and racist. And the SRO was just an embodiment of that. And so there wasn't like a public category of public stories about how he may have harassed or manipulated that position. So the argument we took was more around like the inherent racism that that position holds. And also it was a really good first step to shaking up our disciplinarian system and forcing our administration to kind of reckon with what the disciplinarian system is as a whole at my school. So that was kind of like the unique situation.
To be honest, I literally had no idea why the SRO was in this school until we started the campaign to get them out. Like the program was never talked about. It was never like explained. It wasn't like the officer was like really being integrated into the community as at the school and we knew why he was there and what he was doing. I knew nothing about why like the officer was there. I just knew an officer was there. And like personally, I just had a lot of trauma like navigating interactions with police. And when I'd walk to school, they would stand out in the front like welcoming you in the building on some days, like, and it was kind of a trigger for me because I felt like I was walking into a prison to like go to school, and it just created harm and things inside my body that just didn't feel right. And I didn't even know what the position was really for. And I also had been involved in the restorative justice program at the high school, and I witnessed the SRO creating harm within the restorative justice program. And there was a circle we were facilitating, and the officer came in to the circle as we were doing the meeting and basically got up and was like, I'm looking up the laws on my phone, and what you did to this student in this circle, like what you did, I could arrest you right now for what you did the other day in the lunchroom. And it's against the law, and like I could take you away right now. And if you do it again, like I could do that, but like I'm not going to, because I'm a good guy or whatever, and I'm going to leave. And he just left the meeting, and the whole energy of the circle changed. It was a restorative circle, and we were giving justice to the situation and the problem that had happened between the students. And as soon as he came in threatening all this stuff about arresting and all these types of things, that was the only experience I had ever had interacting with the SRO, besides them being in the hallways and standing outside the doors in the front. So I was like, this needs to go. I like that one experience. I was like, this position has to go. I don't even know what they're doing. And as we were doing the campaign, when we started it, Youth4Change spoke at the school board meeting to bring attention to it and about how we wanted to get them out of the school. And I did a testimony, told my experience, told my story about it. And the principal of the school basically just blatantly called me a liar about everything and said that the program, well, he didn't call me a liar, but basically he did, and kind of denied everything. And then he just read what the program was and was like, before you listen to anyone's story that has false judgment, like come talk to me about the program, which then I learned what the program was about. And the SRO is there to help students, specifically low income students, to regain relationships with their family, help them with housing, access to food, resources like that. And I was like, okay, like that sounds like a really great program that also can be executed without a police officer. That's a social worker's job. That's a counselor's job, a mental health worker's job. Like there could be someone in that position that doesn't represent a system with oppressive practices from the beginning. And yeah, so basically now my whole thing, now that the SRO position is gone, which I've said from the beginning, but I want to keep saying it now that the position is gone, like I want a mental health worker in the school or a social worker to replace that job, because that job does seem, I did hear that it helped benefit a lot of students, and I don't want to take away that resource and that position for the students that really did look up to that officer. But it's also like it did cause harm for a lot of other people, and finding the balance so those students can be supported and not have that taken away, and also not cause the harm that it has been happening to other students. So that's kind of my thoughts moving forward, is advocating to get a social worker to refill the position now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. For my experience, I never interacted with our SRO, which, to be fair, the majority of time when I was in school was during Corona, so and not a lot of interaction. But like from my experience and from what I've heard from other students, the only real purpose he served was like to harass kids who had like weed on them, which we can argue about how needed that is. But that is, I don't know, that's the whole thing. but we actually heard from a student on a survey that we sent out to our community members that when the one case of when there has been like a threat to us in the school, there was someone with what looked like was a gun but was not, outside of our school. What the only thing that SRO did is like he did. Okay, sorry, I'm reading bad. He we went into lockdown and he like did everything that he did was immediately undone by the Montpelier Police Department when they got there. And like he really wasn't doing anything at all. In general, he just kind of hung out around the guidance office at the high school, and then at the elementary school, he was used. A different officer was used to like intimidate an elementary school student in like a parent teacher meeting. Like there were a bunch of problems, which I luckily never personally experienced, but so many members of our community had. And the only like positive notable thing about our school resource officer at the high school was that he had a master's in conflict resolution. So he was the reason there was more pushback from removing the position at my high school was that in general, besides harassing kids who had weed on them, he was fairly good at resolving conflict, which and like having trauma-informed practices, which like I think Cecilia said in the chat. I just said your name wrong. I'm sorry, Celilo. In Vermont, you don't need a degree in social work to be an SRO. You only have to pass an entry-level police officer exams, and then you occupy a position that is in charge of taking care of youth in traumatic situations. So in general, the position, not great. But he didn't really do anything. I never interacted with him, so I don't know how like trauma-informed his practices actually were. And even if I did, I'm white, so it might have looked a lot different than if he was interacting with a BIPOC student in distress. So that is all I have.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question then. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. So the next question is, how did you get SROs out of schools and what was the process like?
A big part of the process was just showing up to like school board meetings and providing a lot of messages of support surrounding organizations and stuff like Outright, and there's other ones, but they're escaped. But just showing up and telling them like our feelings and our experiences, and also emphasizing, while we understand that their intent obviously is to help us in the end, that what they're doing is actually like impacting a lot of people negatively, and just providing a lot of alternative things without directly attacking the RSOs, because obviously that's a tender spot for them and they have a hard time letting that go, because a lot of times they have like relationships with these people, especially in the case with our principal and our RSOs. So I guess that was a big thing, is just reassuring them that we know that they mean good in the end, but they're just not doing good.
So again, there was a little bit of a unique situation at my school what with him only being there for 2 years, and since this was a new position, he actually had to renew his contract around February of this year. And so we were so lucky that right before this renewal, there was such a huge awakening among the student body. And once we mobilized enough folks, the administration caved a lot easier than they have in the past when it has come to other anti-racist initiatives. And so we got really lucky in that sense. And yeah, we just got a bunch of schools together, and the club that I'm a part of, the Racial Alliance Committee, had a significant amount of leverage not over the administration, but leverage as a student group, so that we were slightly more equal to the administration than like other social justice groups have been in the past, just because we had a little bit more presence outside of school, and we had enough influence that we could mobilize people a lot easier than most. And so, yeah, we just used the leverage to our advantage. We got a bunch of students together, and we demanded that his position was not only taken away permanently, but that we redistributed the funds into getting a trauma counselor. And although we didn't get the trauma counselor we were hoping for, we got a really incredible social worker. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, like Trynity said, we showed up to the school board meetings, and the one that we showed up to, the first one we showed up to actually like start like announcing our campaign and what we were doing was actually at the budget meeting. So they were actually doing the budget for the next school year, and we brought up the SRO position, and like thankfully we did have a handful of school board members who really wanted this to be addressed, and they actually stopped going forward with that section of the budget, and they rescheduled a public meeting and for like public comments, so people came forward, and then we kind of just used our like networking skills to like get support from like other organizations to like write letters and like also speak publicly at the Zoom if they were able. And in the end, that basically is where they decided to reconsider, and which I'm really glad they did, because usually they're not. I was really like thrilled when they said that the position wasn't going to continue forward, because usually we get a lot of pushback usually, and this was actually like a win, like, and it happened within a couple weeks, and it was like, whoa, like they're actually like following through with this, because they were going to create a whole other like board that was separate from the school board that we had to go through and jump through all these hoops to actually speak our voices about how we felt and like do all this stuff. And then we had to get appointed to the board if we wanted our represented, blah, blah, blah. It was really weird. And they basically didn't go through that board, and the school board was just like, let's vote on it. And they're like, nope, it's gone for the next school year. So it was mostly just like having a demand, like staying strong to our word of the campaign, and like really just getting community support and involvement. And yeah.
Hey y'all, we're almost at time. Are you guys okay to go over 15 minutes? Can drop it in the chat or okay, so for those of you who can't stay, bye. It was nice having you. I'm glad you guys got to come. And for everyone staying, we're going to move on to the next question, which is, who did you work with? Like, what were the group dynamics like with connection, like working with adults? How did the power dynamics work? Or like just generally anything else, like what you actually worked with?
So my school, I think we basically formed a subcommittee of the school board, which was a whole thing. And I worked with them. We did the whole like appointing process that I think Z was talking about. And like at first it was like a little weird. The meetings were like very official. We had to like leave time for public comment. We had to warn the meetings 24 hours in advance, public meeting law, like all the things. It was a little overwhelming at first. But you kind of got used to it. Especially like getting to know the people when I got to know the people I was working with. And like in terms of like positionality, we kind of all started off, me and the community members. I think a lot of the adults that were there, the parents of students, had very different opinions than what me and the students on the board thought. And so that was also a little bit weird, that like dynamic of disagreement, while trying to work on making a recommendation to the school board. But when we heard from a lot of like personal anecdotes and actually like statistics and data. And I think we all kind of ended up agreeing that there's really no purpose for us to have an SRO position. So that was pretty much process and dynamic.
Yeah, so our club was, we actually didn't start immediately going to the administration and immediately advocating. There were some like fundamental problems with the club itself, which tended to reflect a lot of symptoms of white supremacy culture. So we spent a long time trying to transform the structures and the culture in our club before we could do anything. But once we committed ourselves to that, we had a lot of a less toxic environment, and we were able to get a lot more done once we were on the same page. And then once we started meeting with administration, it was really, really, really difficult because the power dynamic is always going to be unequal, and it is really invalidating to be in a space where it's your word as a student against a supervisor or a principal or a disciplinarian. Like there's always that unequal thing because it's so difficult to be authentic when you know that you are kind of in a weak position in comparison to them. And so it was really, really difficult. And I think as a group, we sacrificed a lot of our mental health, and it definitely deteriorated having those types of conversations. And so I don't think we ever found a balance in working with the administration that was healthy for us as youth. But and I'm not saying it wasn't okay that we had to keep going, but we kind of just kept relentlessly pushing them, and eventually we got a place where we put enough pressure on them where they gave, and that was really satisfying. But it definitely took a lot out of us as a group. So yeah, that was kind of the power dynamics. Does anybody else want to speak?
So Youth for Change kind of just like, we had a lot of community support and like from people from different areas around the state, like not just Brattleboro too, which was really nice, like the ACLU and Outright and the NAACP, just like different organizations. And the dynamic, I guess the dynamic was like, it was actually kind of like reflecting on it, the dynamic was pretty good for like my past experiences, and like I kind of dealing with the administration and going to school board meetings and things like that, because now I'm an alumni and it's like I don't have to deal with like that type of burden that I had with sharing my voice, with it like coming back at me when I went to school, and like all the type of backlash things, or like denial of like my experience and things like that. I just didn't really feel like I as much harm because I didn't have to go back there. It was like, this is just like, I want to better my community and like the school. And like when I was doing organizing work in the school, I did face a lot of that, and it was really hard to show up to things and like speak without getting like super emotional and breaking down like at the school board or something, because it was just like very vulnerable for me to just like share how I was feeling about whatever I was working on at the time. But like now it was just like a different experience, because it was like, oh, I'm outside of that. And like I have community support that are like letting me know that, which like that was before too. It's just like different that I'm a separate entity from like that institution. So like it's like kudos to like the people who are currently still in high school, like doing the work too. And like yeah, and like for a dynamic, like I actually brought it up in like some of the Youth for Change meetings. Like I was like, I feel weird like speaking on this, like saying like, oh, I want to get SROs out of school, but like I'm not even there, which like is fine, because I want that school to be better for the people that are going to come into it and like leave it better than I found it. But at the same time, I'm just like, what, this dynamic is kind of weird. And yeah, but that was all kind of worked through, and like in the end it happened and we did it, so yay. And yeah, I don't know, working with adults was great. They literally, I don't know, they really wanted us to share our voices and have us in the leadership position and be like, hey, like I just want to say that like Z said this, or Trynity said this, Hopme said this, and blah blah blah, like you should listen, and like I'm sorry that you went through that. And like they were very understanding and really wanted us to be centered with this campaign, which was really awesome. And yeah, and they wrote letters of support to us, and yeah, so it was like, I don't know, it was a good dynamic, if that answers the question. But yeah, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. The next question is actually very related to what everyone's talked about already, is how did you not get burnt out? Or like, if you would do something different, would there be a way to prevent burnout?
I guess the big thing for me to avoid burnout is taking time to step back also, and like not to always be thinking about it, because it can be a lot to like to handle all the time, and like not even just RSO stuff, just like in general, any like racial justice work obviously can get very tiring and hard to just keep going. So I guess it's important to take a step back and like do things you like, take care of yourself. Like that's why at Youth4Change we do a lot of like healing work, and like healing is a big thing. We're trying to center that more because it's hard. So that's a big thing. And I also, it ties back into like adult support, and like just having just support around, because like not every single person in Youth4Change helped with this, because some of our members are homeschooled, so it's not really their like like they can't really help us. They don't really know how to like navigate it with us, but they showed up to meetings still. They like talked with us, like they still showed support. They read testimonies and stuff. So it's nice to like have that community and like be able to uplift people if like not everyone is in that campaign. But also we got a lot of positive feedback from our adult support, and like I think that's a big thing. And like they constantly reassure us that like we are doing great work, like we're doing great, like we're seeing change, and like we're actually doing stuff, and like they can see it, and they help to not feeling like overburdened. And so like when we don't necessarily succeed, like we get shut down at a meeting, we'll have like our main person Jillian be like, that was really sucky of them, and like that you guys didn't deserve that, and like that we're not going to have that happen. And so like it's nice to not have to like kind of not to deal with all of it by ourselves, so like they can kind of bear the brunt of it. So I guess that's a big thing, is like community and having like everyone support everyone, so it's not just shouldered by one person or just a few people.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for interrupting, but we're just
No
like
worries.
running out of time really fast. So I just wanted to open up to everyone on the panel to see if you guys have any final thoughts, and people who are watching, if they would mind leaving just some appreciation or sharing some love in the chat. Yeah.
I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who's here and my fellow panelists. Y'all are great. You're doing great. Keep being great. And if you want to do this work, talk to your school administration. Just like you gotta bully them a lot, but it's worth it.
Also, I want to say if anyone is interested in getting involved in changing punishment in school, there's a group of youth meeting about this, so you can drop your email and get more information if you want to be connected. Yeah.
Can't figure out how to get back into the regular chat, but you guys are really inspiring, and thank you for being willing to share. Yeah.
It was so nice to see some new faces and meet you guys. Thank you so much. I have Zoom class, so I should probably go, but it was so nice.
Um, Hey y'all, I'm gonna just step in here and just like I'm gonna remove the spotlights and thank all y'all. You're amazing, and we are over time. I just want to remind folks that you are so welcome to come tomorrow. We have sessions at noon. We're doing gender affirming resources and gender liberation in schools. Please come to that session. Get your free resources. Come and learn about how to create gender resources in your school. And then after that, there's going to be a session about racial justice leadership in Vermont, an amazing other panel. Both of these are going to be streaming on YouTube, but I just want to invite everybody to come back. I want to thank the amazing youth organizers and the amazing panelists. And I think, as we say in at Outright, unmute and say goodbye, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.